Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
Synctank.
All my favorite people follow this Nicole Wordsmith. I don't know if you found this person yet. They have a really cool set of synchronistic posts and tweets everywhere. The ambush really got me in the Oval Office. I thought that was pretty good. But you exist. It's good to meet you. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is my first ever podcast, so.
Oh, really? That's even cooler.
I'm like super nervous right now.
you should be, because we're really strict and around here just so formal about everything we do. No, I think it's gonna be fine.
That's cool. This might mean that this is also your first time making it to a government list, so congratulations on that too.
No,
there is no
I think
watch
I'm for
list
sure.
anymore. There's only a watch index, and it's how many asterisks you have next to your name. So you probably have a 5-star like in Grand Theft Auto at this point, and that's good. Well, I wanted to invite you because I've been really excited about your post. Actually, David, oh, did I freeze? I froze again. It's going to be one of those. But I saw you through David, MK Ultrasound here. He actually pointed you out to us, and I just wanted to invite you on. Maybe you want to talk about why are you so awesome and interested in synchromysticism? It seems like all of your posts are really. My internet's gonna kill me, isn't it? Yeah, it seems like all of your posts are really great. You can go ahead and take the reins, Dave.
Yeah, no, it's just the reason why I wanted to have you on is because looking through your posts, I'm like, they come across as like, so in we've had like an online sync community for years, and you feel like so like your style is the same thing that we've been doing forever. So you feel like an old school sync head. So I had no idea who you were, like, as far as I could, like, it's only a guess, like with somebody's handle on Twitter, like you could have been a 60-year-old man. I have no idea, like, yeah, like it's just, but I don't know, you reminded me of, like, there's like a blog called The Sinkhole that existed like in like 2010, and the wordplay element is really one of the reasons why it reminds me of classic synchead stuff, because it's like you'll make connections based on correspondences that seem really obvious after the fact, but most people wouldn't pick up on. So, like, for example, he was just pointing out like the ambush, and then you're like, here's a bush, and like it's like all that, so you are indeed a wordsmith, so it feels appropriate to have that as your handle. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I want to kick off with just a question, because I'm curious, how do you prevent from descending into full-blown schizophrenia in this realm of like just connecting this to that? It seems that it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, no, it totally is. It's a fine line for sure. Like sometimes I've got to pull myself back, or just.
Do you have any like tips or tricks? So there's certain times when you know that you're teetering on the edge and it's time to pull back a little bit?
Yeah, there's been time like I know when I'm talking to like people who don't think in this realm, right? That they're like, whoa, like you're way out there. That's like totally unrelated, right? But for me, sometimes they are related. Like they just can't see it, or they're not like on that level of consciousness to even be thinking about that. But no, I like I have to catch myself sometimes and be like, all right, just go take a walk, like get a life, like go like hang out with people or do something.
Go touch grass.
Productive. Yeah.
Is there
I
is
try
there
that.
a version
Our friends are
that-
sync heads.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, on that, is there a version where you're out and just like grocery shopping or just out in normie world and starting to mention some of this stuff, or is this like online only? Like, do you cater just to the audience or what?
No, I like bring it up in real life. I'm like, hey, that's like that or that, and and people sometimes they're caught off guard a little bit, or they're like, I didn't think about it like that, but they can't deny it. Sometimes I think it catches them. I think I was put here to be like a little bit of like a shock and awe like element in the Matrix, like kind of like shock people out of the hypnosis somewhat.
You have a really great post. So maybe you want to try to VH1 specialist. Like, how did you get here and why do you sync?
I don't know. Oh my God. So I only like COVID was really what woke me up. I don't even want to say like woke me up, but whatever. Like I was like very much in normie land prior to COVID. And I don't know if like that mass like trauma that some of us all went through, like, I don't know if I MK ultra'd myself, you know, like, but first I was like angry all the time. And I was like, oh my God, like, how are they doing this to us? The government I was like so pissed at everything every day. Like someone would be like, the sun is out. And I'd be like, well, look at chemtrails. Or like I just could not find the joy in anything. And I don't know what happened, but like eventually something told me that it's ultimately like it's a joke, right? Like just chill out. Like your life is kind of a joke. It's all riddles. And so I had like my whole life, I had always been into word games. Like I always liked to play Words with Friends or Scrabble or whatever. Like, I don't know if that was some like cosmic like preparation that I was getting. So I was always really into just word games. But so then I started to kind of like see the mockery, right? Like the ritual mockery that was going on and like in some of the terms and the things that they repeat to us, like the hot like words that the news anchors like continuously repeat. At first I thought, oh, they're just like, this is such nonsense. But then I started to realize there's a joke in it that we're not getting. Like they talk about things so seriously, like the bird flu. And then we're like, oh, well, birds fly. And like the bird flu doctors dressed up like the plague doctors used to dress up like birds. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's like this weird, like, I don't claim to understand all of this, but I can see, I think God maybe primed me with like a little bit of a perverse sense of humor for a higher holy purpose. I'm just kidding. I don't know. But
no, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like I
what
the joke.
A Britney Spears pie reference. This is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like this is pretty. Like you don't know how happy you're making us right now. I don't know.
There was another scene too that the paparazzi didn't get it, where she had the drill up to her head. But I guess, yeah.
Yeah,
that was how she ended the conservatorship.
And the deleted scene about Pepsi from Pie, of course, you know. But
was there a deleted Pepsi scene from Pie?
No, I wish. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
Oh, because I was totally open to that. Like, it's not out of the question.
Wait, let's read this one, though. In the movie Pie, character Max shaves his head in a desperate attempt to clear his mind and access the hidden mathematical pattern, a 216-digit number that corresponds to the name of God, Kabbalah numerology. Strangely, Britney Spears shaved her head on 2/16/2007. 2/16. It's a solid. It's a solid sync. All right, like I'm gonna give it a 10. It's really good.
So, like, you know, like this always happened to me like early on with Jake Kotza, and I was so excited to talk to Jake Kotza. I don't know if you know who that is, Jake. So he's been doing very, very similar stuff to you for a really long time, where he makes these connections that, like I say, they seem obvious after the fact. But like, I was so excited to talk to him because like if he'd share something, and I'm like, I'm going 10 steps ahead of like what he's connecting for me. I'm like, and it becomes this question of like, do you know like how significant this thing is that you're sharing? So like with the 216 number there, like you say like a 26, there's kind of a joke. It's very satirical in Pi when they're looking for the name of God, right? But 216 is the gematria of Gevurah. So it's of the terrestrial realm of the 7 lower Sephirot in the Kabbalistic tree of life. It's the top of the terrestrial on the left, which is judgment or severity, depending on how you look at it. But it's the point is that it's intellect, it's left brain as opposed to right brain, right? So it's like they're looking for this name. So it's actually like it's kind of a satirical statement on Israel and what these people represent in this movie, that they have this ambition to get this thing that they want to have. And that's why later on when he's like, it's not the number, I'm sure you've encoded every 216 number, and he's like, it's what's between the numbers, it's the syntax, it's how you arrive at it, it's the space, you know. And so he's gone beyond the intellect. That's the point, is that he actually is in touch with the thing that's pointing at, that isn't necessarily severity. Like that's how we experience it when we want to like get something from it, rather than like seeing what it has to offer us, if that makes sense. So like it's in his approach. So that's why it's the syntax, is how he arrived at it. It's actually his experience. And so they're like, no, it's not about the experience, because they're into kind of this idolatrous treatment of the thing, these particular characters. Not to say that represents everybody in that particular group at large, but what these people are made to represent is that greed, you know. So they're not interested in the thing in itself, as Kant would say. They're interested in something else. So when I look at your post and I'm seeing that, it's like it has this you know, deep resonance, because too, like if you're looking at what Britney Spears is, as like kind of like, I mean, her, like, didn't she come from like the Mickey Mouse Club? Am I mistaken?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like her as this kind of like product that's not, they're not interested in the soul, they're interested in this other thing, and then what that does to a person, and how, like, you know, in Pi, like Max's own processing around everything, like he's trying to get at the heart of the thing, but he has to deal with this shell, you know, and all these other people the people who want to use it on Wall Street, the number on Wall Street, so they can get what they want. There's kind of this statement that the rabbis in this case are not dissimilar from the people on Wall Street, because of their particular relationship to this thing that's so transcendent of all of that. And so I don't know, it gets so deep when I look at that, and I'm seeing those, like the implications in Pi, you know. By the way, he's coming out with a new film pretty soon that looks interesting, Darren Aronofsky.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Using AI.
Is that right? Oh, there's
Yeah.
another thing though. He's doing short films with AI, but I think his actual film that's coming out is not AI.
There's a proper movie that Darren Aronofsky is coming out with that is being like co-produced with him using Google's VO3, which is their new like filmmakers specific edition of AI.
Oh, okay. I thought it was two different stories, but you could be right. There's like the short film thing that they're talking about, and then there's this other film, but maybe they're connected. So yeah, that would make sense.
Is it Underland or Caught Stealing?
Caught Stealing. Yeah, it says post-production, but they have a preview for it.
Interesting. Yeah, I just wanted to, I mean, some of the posts that you've done, even recently, this one was really interesting to me. Things I don't, and these are things I haven't thought about either. So there's like a double there. It's cool when we see the same thing, but these are things we hadn't really looked at. Mare, marriage, horse and carriage, bridal, groom, hitched. Why do you suppose marriage comes with so many equine metaphors? I mean, and so you just leave it as an open question, but it's also useful because other people can answer you. What do you think? Have you come to any thoughts about this since then? Because this is such a good one already.
I mean, yeah, I think it's kind of I don't know. I think kind of a nightmare. I think this whole life is like somewhat of a nightmare. But it's not really real on some level, but it is real on another. It is real. But then like on a higher level, like it is kind of, there's something very surreal. Like we are in the surreal life. We're all like the D-list celebrities that like didn't make it into heaven or the higher realms. And our lives are, I don't know, there's a lot of suffering in there. Either way you pick your suffering, right? Like I always say that with the Chris Rock thing when he was like, you can be married and bored, or you can be single and lonely. And like, those are your choices in this life. And it's like kind of I don't know. To me, it feels true. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well,
I like the stirrups connection on that. It was like the fourth one was like so if you come up with like a word like stirrups, right, and that fits into this sync, do you think that the person that got to write down the definition of that word at some point, they were in on something and they were planting this, or that it was always going to be called stirrups because there's like a synchronicity that we can't avoid?
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like whoever like created our language is probably influencing it from outside the simulation or whatever. And they're like planting little, I don't know if it's our future selves, our guides or whatever, but they're like planting clues outside of it. Like, cause I also think about HIPAA, right? Like HIPAA is like a horse word too. And that's kind of like medical. And I don't know. I think there's something like very symbolic about the fact that we're born into hospitals, and like hospitals have those bare ass gowns, right? Like there's like, it's just like it's like a divine cosmic roast that we're born into here on Earth.
You're talking about language too, and you know, the roots of language are mathematical, and so like to look at like wordplay, you can have math play too, right? So it's like the way in what the Babel story signifies and all of that, like that there's this idea that we all had one unified language, right? Which is like with math, they say you can actually have a right answer. Like not all things have that, where you're like, no, this is the right answer. Like there's no like opinion about it is irrelevant. Like the thing is the thing, you know, but like then language then isn't supposed to be like that. There's not supposed to be like a right answer. So it gets kind of weird when we could have our disagreements based on language, but with math, you can't really have a disagreement ultimately if it's just like arithmetic. You know what I mean? Like, and
depends on if it's base 10 or 12, but yeah, I guess.
It's true. But once we agreed on the basics of it, you actually can have a right answer.
I would argue that the Cultural Revolution of France has more to do with base 12 becoming base 10 than almost any other political or nationalistic issue, right? Because that we moved to the decimal system destroyed our calendars, destroyed agriculture, created wars. I mean, mathematics is definitely the primary factor in manipulation. But I also wanted to say I agree, Anna, because of other sync work I've done. I was looking at Duolingo sending me this blog post the other day about where did English come from and how old is English and how long back could you understand somebody if you go in a time machine. You'd maybe deal with 18th century English, 17th century English to an extent, maybe 1666 because everyone read Shakespeare. But you go back before Shakespeare, forget about it. You can't talk to them. It's Beowulf English. So there is a thing that happened like 400 years ago where they reinvented English, still call it that. But what is English? It's the language of the angels. And it's this creation of, John Dee, 007. And maybe also William Cecil, maybe Edward de Vere, because shaking a spear, the idea that Shakespeare is not even a real person or he was an actor paid. I'm so screwed by my internet, huh? That's probably destroyed.
No, he was Kevin Bacon Shakespeare, right? Isn't that the theory?
Right. Sir Andrew Kevin Bacon. But if it is, that's kind of an interesting thought that the English language was supposed to be median work. Median work, divine English, because they thought it was God's language.
Have we ever disproven that?
The idea that it's God's language, the angels.
Yeah.
I think it's what a lot of people are saying is that this book, like the Bible, is written in the language of angels. Maybe English, the way we use it today, is created by like what Anna said, something on the other side of the matrix. It's some kind of a supernatural creation, the English language.
Well, I think I agree with that because aside from other phonetic languages, and I'm biased because English is the language that I'm predominantly speak, but like English and the way that phonetic English works is that you can recreate any other word in any other language from any other culture as long as you can kind of put it together phonetically, and that is not a property of every single language. There's plenty of languages in which are not able to do that. And I guess maybe aside from like the beeps and bloops of like certain like African dialects, but even those, they can be represented phonetically. A little extra work.
Right. But what about David Bohm's the Rio mode? Do you know about that? His whole thing with like that. So he was working with Krishnamurti, right? So they were like he's a physicist who was like kind of a he followed in Einstein's footsteps, right? But they were looking at the nature of language, how we have this subject object relationship in everything that we say. So like there's the old idea that like God is a verb, so they developed a way of speaking that actually Ramana Maharshi spoke to the same thing. Even Srinivasa Datta Maharaj, like you had a lot of Vedantists who kind of like had a similar idea of like that we could approach language in such a way that like all these things we kind of take for granted, that's just like the basis of our speaking, like you could completely change it. So like even like people relating to ourselves like we're objects, like it's in the language, like it's implied, when really like what the hell even are we? Like it just removes all those assumptions that are inherent in the speech, and it's like it's pretty trippy. But it's called the Rio mode. I believe that's how you pronounce it. But yeah. What are we looking at?
Gurdon fam.
Enochian. We were looking at Enochian.
Sorry, my thing broke, but Enochian was the angel language that John Dee was saying English would be created. They retrofit English into Enochian. So it really goes back to what you were saying, this idea that our language is constructed, and on one hand by manipulative, illuminated, super dudes, 007. But on the other hand, he says he got it from angels like Joseph Smith out of a hat, right? Like he's trying to figure out what this language is. And no one spoke English the same after that. The Shakespeare created thousands of new words and new ways of communicating. And it's interesting. I was thinking this just this night because I hear Ukrainians around me a lot. It's really hard to learn Russian, compared to English. English is this weird Swahili that anyone can understand, anyone speak. You can speak like Yoda. Yoda, you could speak like, it doesn't matter. I'll completely understand you. That doesn't work with nearly any other language. So it's pretty interesting, this kind of communication we have that's built around synchromysticism and synchronicity, and it's flippable, it's exchangeable, it rhymes, right? It's a very strange language that we have access to.
But that's kind of like part of the Latin roots too, right? Because Latin, you can kind of rearrange the words any way that you want, leave out certain words, and you still get the same context.
Yeah, the Latin is like the root of all of our laws too, right? And sciences, and they call it like the dead language. So that always like stuck with me too, because I don't know, they say the underworld communicates in riddles, and so like if we're in the underworld, then it's just, I don't know, it's just helpful clues to pick up on.
Underworld Tartarus.
Yeah.
Well, Alice in Underland. So like the actual original Lewis Carroll story, it's like Alice's Adventures Underground, and like that's a whole aspect of the thing. It's like there's also a really great book called Lewis Carroll in Numberland, where it shows all the math that he incorporated into what he was working at, which is connected directly to the language, kind of like what I was saying. But yeah, it's trippy. Andreas, I've been meaning to. So there's these recordings of Aleister Crowley speaking to the Enochian. You can actually get recordings of him speaking in Enochian. Like that exists. Like
that sounds totally safe to listen to.
Right, but I have it on vinyl actually. But like anyone cares what people have on vinyl. But I would really like to take those recordings, not just the Enochian, but him speaking, and program it into AI so we could actually have like Aleister Crowley's voice say anything. So if you could help me with that at some point, I'd really appreciate it. But yeah,
we can definitely do that with the script probably.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right, we'll work on that.
I saw also that backwards.
Sounds like Boston. I saw that you posted this also. I for some reason just decided to watch My Name Is Earl through, and I think I'm on the last like 4 episodes of this show. So I thought this was interesting also because it's this idea of karma, and that I remember thinking the same thought that Carson Daly, who says he's Satan, right? Maybe do you have? It sounds like kind of a spiritual background. Like, is that kind of something that plays into your epistemology? Is that you're spiritual?
Yeah, I wasn't always. I think I was like mostly agnostic, I think, up until COVID. And then I started to like, I don't know, I got sucked into all of the like satanic, whatever stuff. Right. And so then I was like, oh, well, like if there's a Satan, there's a God, right? Like how could there be an adversity to something that doesn't exist? So I started to believe, I definitely like started believing God just through that. But then, and then I was kind of like exploring, I don't know, all of it. I went real deep into like the alien stuff and like the super soldiers and the like secret space program stuff. And so that's where I went first. And I was like, okay, I think like the aliens and the angels and the demons, and I think they're all like the same, just different terms for the same things. I wasn't sure.
Like
I don't know.
Project Camelot type stuff you were looking at?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, there was these people that I met at a conference that started hosting like super like secret soldier kind of talk. And I really was like fascinated by it. But then, and
the also, aliens are us from the future as super soldiers. That's always fun.
Right.
Yeah. But at my job that I worked at, like, I still work there though. One of my coworkers, she's a Christian woman. She's like an older Christian woman raised by like, you know, a pastor father. And she was always talking about Jesus. And I was like, she doesn't know, like, she doesn't know about the Anunnaki. She doesn't know about this or that, or like all the things, right? I thought like I was just like, I was so arrogant. But she, I don't know, she introduced me to Jesus, and I had some real, like actual, really tangible experiences that I couldn't deny it anymore. So I went, so then I went on Twitter. That's when I was like, I was really mostly on Instagram at that time, like consuming information, but not having anywhere to talk or question or ask, like, you know, because the Bible leaves like so many questions, and there wasn't like ChatGPT for me at that time. So so I took it to Twitter to try to like get some of my questions answered through dialogue with other people. But the system throttled me like immediately. The first post I did was on like the cult of Sight Bell and how it was playing out with like the mass kind of castration that was going on with society. I thought it was a great like thread for my first thread ever. And literally nobody saw it, like no person at all saw it. And so anyway, most of my earlier Twitter was just me talking to myself for the most part. So I ended up like just doing my own monologues for a long time.
You have to save those up. Well, I mean, you came out of the time you said of COVID, but I think even just before COVID, like the few years before COVID, it was becoming a bit more in vogue, right? To look and try to reanalyze, to deep analyze, deep search, whatever communications were being put out publicly, because it might become assumed that everything being said publicly is superficial and that there's something deeper being communicated. And I think that's something that even people were looking for, just political messages, but it became clear there's a more esoteric level to all of these communications. I love this one that you put up, the Order of Quetzalcoatl, talking about the Q Masonic appendant body, right? I mean, did you have feelings about Q before COVID?
Before COVID? I had no idea about Q before COVID.
COVID was when it happened for you, when you heard about it.
Yeah. COVID was when I like, and I was that was really interesting. That really blew my mind.
What was your impression when like 9/11 happened? Like where it was just the official story? You just took that?
A little bit. I kind of questioned it, you know, like I think what really always stuck with me was the Flight 93, because I thought like if they could take over the plane, why would they just crash it to the ground? Like, why wouldn't they save their lives or whatever, right? Like, there's no way. Like, I just couldn't imagine humans doing that, like taking the plane back from the terrorists and then just like crashing it in the field to protect a Congress or whatever. But
technically crashing it into a collapsed salt mine that was full of water. Just
disintegrated
to be specific. Yeah. Vapor disintegrated into a collapsed salt mine, so that conveniently looked like a collision on the ground, but it was really just a salt mine.
It's crazy. But
Whereas
like that's the gauge. Like how much you questioned 9/11, because there was the interim between 9/11 and COVID hysteria. Like that was the time to like the degree to which you seriously questioned the narrative around 9/11 and how deep you went really determined how you're going to respond to the messaging around COVID stuff. So like and the symbolism is almost just a complete continuation. Like in everything about COVID-19, you're like, okay, so coronavirus, right? The corona is the rays around the sun, like whether an eclipse or the sun itself, right? It's the sun rays. And then you're like, 19 is the sun in tarot. And then you're like, and then even just all this symbolism around would be Ray should be the front of the head. So like the moon would correspond to Kuf, which is the back of the head. Some people interpret that historically, even if you go further back, it goes all the way back to medieval times. But the idea of the Hebrew letter Kuf is like actually like related to the pineal gland, whereas the pituitary would be related to Resh. So like you have the sun and the moon, right? So there's this symbolism there. That's like, and if you look at like Event 201, which was like the exercise that they did in 2019 before COVID, that's just like so explicit, like just like this practice exercise of what everything that followed. It was like a rehearsal. It was like almost like that show, The Rehearsal, you know, like you can see they're just practicing for this thing that's going to happen with all of the same messaging and how we're going to treat masks and how, you know, we'll get people to getting into the vaccination stuff and everything. Like it's all there from the get-go. So it's just, it carries with it because there's exercises related with 9/11 too that are so explicit. Like you can even see those manuals that were handed out within the government for like where they have the target on the World Trade Center and how, you know, Bush was like, no one anticipated like, you know, crashing into buildings or planes crashing into buildings or whatever. And then you look at the manual and it's like so explicit, like that literally that has been discussed like a lot. Like it's so bizarre, like the amount of correspondences between the two and what the two towers represent kabbalistically and every Masonic hall and all of this, and you just see this like really obvious esoteric symbolism of Yakin and Boaz, and then how you relate to the sun and the moon, like those pillars of the sun and the moon, and then like what the treatment of coronavirus. You're like it's like this feels like programming that's like so like directed. You know, it's like, how is this not intentional? How could it's inconceivable?
Well, what a tangled web we weave, right? Because that was the other thing, was around, was it 2006 when Tangled came out, and it talks about this quarantined girl in the kingdom of Corona, right? She's living in Corona.
Oh my God, I didn't realize that.
Bubble Boy.
Yeah, everything about that one. It's the symbol of the city is the sun because of the corona, right? And she's, I mean, there was a lot of symbolism for this movie that was kind of on that level. But of course, the fact that it was called Tangled, I thought that was too good.
Right before, a couple things. The original story of Tangled, not the Rapunzel version, but it was also called Parsley, I believe, the Italian version. And one of those iterations was about a pandemic, and then they had to get this special herb in order to like cure. But even another crazy sync is that the movie that Disney distributed right before Tangled was Tales from the Earthsea, which was the Miyazaki movie from Studio Ghibli, which was like dad and son. And this movie also starts out on the premise that there is a pandemic wiping out the entire kingdom, which only stood out to me because once they advanced from the first quarter of the movie, that point never comes up again. And it was just like, why did they lay out this whole pandemic story and then they don't even touch it again? Now it's all about dragons and stuff. So yeah, the Tangled and Tales from the Earthsea both I think came out sequentially and around the same time.
You know that meme of the guy with all the knives around him all pointing at him, and he's just like, he's in the middle.
That's Tangled.
That's Tangled. And when in that scene before that happens, he's like dropping in to steal the crown, right? So the crown related to the corona, right? So he's stealing the crown, and then he sneezes and they all turn around and he says to them, he goes, "Hay fever." So like he's like even if you're, I could go to another level with it with Tetragrammaton and the two hays being the
the line that he says.
Oh right man, hey. Oh hey.
Yeah.
Oh, my,
but he says that he doesn't sing because it's in the middle of a singing sequence and they're all talking about what their dreams are. And when it gets on him, he goes, "Oh, I don't sing," and then the knives come out. And then you've got all these brutes that were just jumping around and dancing and singing about creating ceramic unicorns and stuff. And then this guy's like, "Oh, I'm too cool for that."
Yeah, it's a different scene. I'm sorry, but yeah, totally. Wow, what the hell?
Get your Disney scenes straight here.
I know, but you're right, Andreas. The tangled, that is like what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive, and like all the programming that goes into it is like so crazy deceptive, on so many levels. It's just like, yeah, it's crazy.
What was the name of Cassandra's pet? Owl, right? Is because there was an owl as Cassandra's pet in the Tangled series as well, right? So like they've just kept taking it to a further and further Masonic Bohemian Grove kind of place. Oh my
God! And then it's Cassandra that she's
Cassandra,
a predictor in the
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen David's work at all, but David has a documentary called "I'm Sorry, Cassandra, I Misunderstood Everything Predicts 9/11," right? Which seems like kind of on the same wave of this kind of move.
Well, I need to check that out.
Have you also seen the sync between Tangled and Rapunzel and Saint Barbara, the namesake of Santa Barbara? That Saint Barbara, the original story was that she wanted to convert to Christianity and her father wouldn't allow that to happen. So he sticks her up in this big tower to make sure that the outside world can't influence her. And even in her tower, in these old like illustrations of it, she carved this window that had the Holy Trinity in it as a way of showing, like, even if you try and keep me from the world, I'm still going to embrace this Holy Trinity. Like Christ is still coming in. And that the father was so upset by this, he kills her himself. He chops her head off. And when after he kills his own daughter, Saint Barbara, he gets struck by lightning and dies from that. And because of that, Saint Barbara is likened to being the patron saint of artillery and fireworks and firepower, because like her retribution took out her own father. And even if you go and look at US artillery groups, and they've got like little emblems, that's why it has a picture of Rapunzel on the coin. It's got this chick with a tower behind her, and she's holding wheat, because in some of the original tellings of Saint Barbara's story and then in Rapunzel's stories, as soon as she runs out of the tower, she hides in a field of wheat. So now you've got this weird like a whole different like agricultural goddess concept that weaves into that. I just realized this recently. It blew my, I didn't even know that Santa Barbara was named after this Saint Barbara, which is Rapunzel, because I guess the date that Santa Barbara was discovered was like her patron saint day, which is like December 4th or something.
Well, and Barbara means savage, so it's like barbaric.
Oh boy,
that word comes from. So
the savage, the Tartar, the Barbara.
Yeah, they did that Barbenheimer like weekend together, right? Where they mixed
the Barbenheimer. That's actually the most
artillery, essentially.
Oh my God. Good point.
Barbieheimer. I actually never, you know what? I've been thinking about that a lot recently, and I think you might have just made that sync for me, which is sad, because I think out of my obsession with Tartaria, I should have gotten the Barbieheimer thing, because the Visigoths. So yeah, it's such a good one. Oh, those are great.
Also, how this all relates with Sharon Tate too, and that whole like, because I'm working on something with Thomas where we're putting together this comic book, and like at the end of this manuscript that I was going over for like a couple hours last night, it introduces the Sharon Tate aspect. So what's her name? The lady who played Barbie, Margot Robbie. So she had played Sharon Tate in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Sharon Tate, one of her last films was Valley of the Dolls. And so like even in Valley of the Dolls, they'll like do this, there's subliminals, like they have the thing with the mannequins where they're walking past the mannequins and talking about the fraternity pin or whatever. I can't do all of this justice, but her resonance with like, it's so crazy. This is so layered. Like the beginning of Barbie, the way that they have this treatment of 2001, a Space Odyssey from 1968, and the kids treat the Barbie like it's the bone and it's this like evolutionary leap and all this stuff. But like, it gets really weird if you look at what happened with Sharon Tate in terms of like the ritual aspects of the thing. It's like it's pretty nuts as it relates to, as weird as it is to say, with 2001. 2001 has a crazy resonance with Rosemary's Baby. She was originally set to play Rosemary, so there's layered symbolism. I'm not going to go down the whole giant rabbit hole, but I was like going deep into that at the end of this thing last night, because we're like, our treatment of what the comic is one thing, and then this is another. So like I literally am writing notes to Thomas last night, like being like, well, I don't know. I'm like, I'm gonna say this anyway because you brought it up, but I'm like, this could be a whole other subject for a whole other comic book. It's just on that level.
I mean,
but
there's
yeah,
a lot of weird stuff about Margot Robbie. For one thing, that she's from Queensland, and that she's from the Down Under, which is kind of that, where's Down Under from what we've been talking about, the underworld. And her best movie, in my opinion, which is I, Tonya, right? This movie changed my perspective on something I remembered my entire life to be a certain way because the media presented it as a certain way. This seems like a major decrypt in terms of CNN fake news is the I, Tonya movie, because it shows how completely misrepresented the event was and how everyone around her made her into this villain that she wasn't really, right? And of course, like, it's the same pink sort of Barbie font. So there's something to that as well, for sure.
I believe it was released the same day as Cherry Gazelle's Lipstickopolis. There's sync with this. It's on the website. But anyway, go on. Sorry,
yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say that Nancy attack on the kneecap happened on January 6th. That was like another cap. That was like another casualty that happened on January 6th. Was the Nancy.
That's crazy. Didn't I, Tonya come out the day and year that Trump was inaugurated? Am I mistaken in that? We should have to check.
I would believe you instantly, David. Let me just see.
I'm not sure. I'm not stating that as a fact.
No, but it's believable.
So the Trump J6 was really a ritual repetition of this J6.
Why did I think that? I try IMDb. Just look at the dates on IMDb. I think that there's something weird here. If you could.
Say it again.
January 6th is also an Epiphany Day, right? That's like a Three Kings Day. I forget, but I think there's definitely something about like the cap and the capital and how our names are written in all caps at the and how there's like MAGA caps. Like there's definitely something about like the headstone and the all capital and how they are strong. I don't know.
I've been thinking about Krav Maga,
Thomas, I'm
right?
going too far, Thomas.
No, not going too far. I was thinking Krav Maga though, right? Because Israeli self-defense, their martial arts is Krav Maga, so it's MAGA. Is essentially this? Yeah, and there's definitely something.
One where like you just bite and like kick and just do whatever you need to do, right?
Well, you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, it's called Krav Maga, so there's something about that Krav and then MAGA, something about that. But and Capitis Diminutio Maxima, like you said, like all rights removed from the MAGA caps, everything in capital letters.
So just so you know, Wikipedia changed the date. So originally when I, Tonya first came out, they included, because if you go to IMDb and you look at the release dates, there's like a bunch of different ones. So for the Napa Valley Film Festival, it was like November 10th. And then in Poland, November 12th. But this November 10th date was originally on Wikipedia, and then they changed it on me. So that happens sometimes because if something's released in the US, they pick one of the dates for one of the film festivals. So just one of those things. So yeah, anyway, just one.
January 6th going back through time is pretty interesting, right? Like Philip of Swabia, second coronation of the Romans for the Holy Roman Empire, King of Bohemia crowned, Catholic monarchs Franz Ferdinand and Isabella, first European School of Higher Learnings opened in 1536. And yeah, the Epiphany thing, I remember thinking that this year, or last year rather. Was it this year? This year. Earlier this year, I was celebrating Epiphany because it's really popular in Germany. And the fact that January 6th is remembered for being sort of this war that's being fought ideologically on both sides of freedom, it's kind of an interesting time. What did you think about January? Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say this real quick. This was a really weird thing I found out, was that January 6th is statistically the most common day to die. And like that, like really? a funeral director or whatever had put out an article about it, like before to the 2021 or whatever that, like whenever our capital was. But there's like a funeral director said that January 6th is the most common day to die. So I thought about like capital punishment and how they had all those like, they had all those like gallows like set up that day on the on Capitol Hill. And so so anyway, I thought that for me was like a really interesting kind of like sync date going on
Sync
there.
for sure. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's also 16 in a way, right? Because it's 1/6, right? Which is the Trump Tower card, right? So
yeah.
in the tarot deck, you have the Trump cards, and the 16th Trump card is the Tower. So it's literally the Trump Tower, right? So yeah, there you go. 16 is significant in that way. What a trip.
Yeah. What would you do with 16, David, Gematria wise?
Well, I mean, I don't know what I was just saying. Like, I don't know. Last night I was
How dare you?
emphasizing.
You should be on Occult Decode right now.
No,
I know. I felt bad. I wanted
in
you
the
to say it
manuscript
as
that
a
I was
plug.
looking at last night, I was like emphasizing to Thomas in the notes to like highlight if he includes the Trump card to emphasize the 16. So kind of
You can just type 16 in there and hit enter and see what matches up in Chaldean.
Yeah, but if I don't hit enter, it's actually cool for a second to do that before you hit enter, because as soon as I hit enter, you get even more information, right? That's the
correct. Yeah. If you hit enter, it'll search through all the ciphers that you've got selected and find all the matches for that number.
This is such a great website you put together. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, you put that together?
Yeah, occultdecode.com, because I found math errors in all the other popular Gematria calculators online, that if you went above a certain number, it would, like, the math would break. So I was getting frustrated with it. So I just made this.
Oh my God. Awesome.
Super useful. It's true. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of the Chaldean versus the ordinal too, 16 by 16. I mean, it's very interesting. I always think of 18, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to
And
say,
good
like,
job being able to cut us off at any point, because we're just going to do that anytime. So
16 is like the age we get our driver's license, and like if in terms of karma and cars and our bodies being the vessels, I wonder if there's like something to that in the 16.
Oh yeah, I just saw you mentioning that in a tweet about the idea. So like it's a Meatloaf line from "Objects in the Rearview Mirror may appear closer than they are," which is pretty loaded for me, because he says, "And the soul is just a car." Like in the lyrics of the song, he's relating to that, because he's like, you're in a car. That's the premise. So it's like he's really good with the imagery. But I tripped out on that's actually in Sorry Cassandra at one point, is the music video for "Objects in the Rearview Mirror" has the cop from Terminator 2, like with his son dies in a plane crash, and so like there's like this like heavy laden symbolism when you consider like that, like Meatloaf in Fight Club is like oh man, no, because like the end of Fight Club with the destruction of the buildings, and he's like, you met me at a really strange time in my life, and like all the like the how that's one of those many predictive things related with 9/11. Like you're just like, oh, these buildings like controlled demolition, and he's like, but people outside of that wouldn't know. Like this is that is a movie about a conspiracy to take down buildings. You know what I mean? It's like, but this is like the people's movement rather than it coming from like a government conspiracy. So it's like, it's almost like Fight Club is like showing you like the same thing that you would see with 9/11 if it was like an organic kind of like something that was coming from the people as a revolutionary thing, as opposed to a new world order government control thing, even though it's kind of the same. Like they're bringing
the cool people wanted Tower 7 to go down. See, we were waiting for it because of that
right
movie.
Well, in the case of Fight Club, they're literally bringing about the Jubilee as described in prophecy, because it's like the end of the debt and the releasing of the slaves. So he's like got the whole thing with the bees and the drones, like we're all the like the worker bees, like he's like his office space kind of reality. And then like he's like he wants to get out of the slavery, right? Like that's the whole point, is to be liberated. And so 9/11 like worked in the opposite way, like drives us deeper into the opposite of the Jubilee. I mean, the actual Jubilee would be the end of the debt and the end of the slavery. But like, you see what I'm saying? Like, even like when they do the Jubilee now, quote unquote, like they have the event that they call the Jubilee in England, it's just a celebration of wealth. Like it's literally the opposite of what it's supposed to be, right? It's super weird.
I think about like on Fight Club, right? Remember when it turns out like he blew up his own apartment? Like he was the one that
spoiler alert.
blew it up. Huh?
Spoiler alert.
Oh, sorry. Oh my God.
No, whatever.
But I think about the fact that like the Middle East, like we always were heard about like terrorists from the Middle East, and like that's ME, right? Like that's me if you did the abbreviation. And so sometimes I wonder if like on some sort of like cosmic level, like there is like this is all happening from within us, like the war within ourselves. It's like we're the micro, like what is that? Like we're the microcosm of the macrocosm. And so since we're all like have this like battle against like spirit and flesh and like all the stuff that goes on within us, I wonder if that like projects in the it was us, like right? Like y'all did
Absolutely. That's the whole point. That's like the point of Joachim and Boaz itself, because you're describing two pillars, which is this duplicity, right? And there's like the two hemispheres, but the pillar on the left is actually pointing back at the right in the name itself, because the first pillar is established, that means established, Joachim, and Boaz means in strength. So the second pillar actually points back at the other pillar by saying in strength. It's saying the strength is over there. And then the connecting, what would be Philip Petit's line between the two towers, the pathway that connects Chesed and Gevurah is actually the strength card. It's the strength arcana, right? So it's like this is the ninth arcana. So like literally, it all becomes a question of like what is actual strength. So like we have and it's an idolatrous idea to have this kind of false notion of what amounts to actual strength, right? So that's like kind of at the crux of the Kabbalistic tree, is kind of this replicant of what would be like the essential, like, so you have the Bible verse, the stone that the builders rejected will be the keystone of the archway, so to speak. So it's like if you have an archway and you have a center stone that's taking in all the weight, the meaning is that center stone has been removed. That's the Shekhinah, that's the sacred feminine, and something in its place is put there. So like I see like gender ideology stuff that's happening is kind of like the epitome of that, where it's like we're literally going to have a replicant of the thing holding the structure of society together as like an aversion to actually like coming face to face with our true nature. And so that's like even there, you're showing me Sharon Tate. Like I see that all the symbolism that plays into that as totally connected to that. Even when you look at Valley of the Dolls, the whole idea is that they are relating to a replicant of the thing. It's a mannequin rather than the thing in itself, which totally connects to Barbie as like you're going to have a substitute reality that's not the thing in itself. And it's like that's what we're coming up against. So it's also one of those things that I feel like you can be really positive about if you really get into it, because like the idea that it's always darkest before the dawn, right? So like there's gonna be the biggest resistance is gonna come up the closer that you actually get to the truth of the matter, So I don't know, heavy duty symbolism.
You've done some pretty interesting work actually on femininity and this idea of like the self-representation. Do you have any thoughts that you might want to consider that, like what you mean to be a, the social representation of what it means to be a woman as a spiritual being?
I'll take.
Were you talking to me?
Yeah, I was talking to you. Although it's funny if Thomas wants to take that one. That's fine.
I'll take this one.
Okay.
No, I won't take this one.
Okay. Remind me of the question. I thought you were asking someone else, and so I kind of spaced out for a minute. I'm sorry.
And that's what I worried. I was like, I should be careful on this. No, but I'm just because I was trying to figure. I was looking for the post you made about this, but you made a number of posts recently about femininity. I think one of them had to do with the Oval Office, right? Getting into the Oval Office, I think was the one that kind of pushed me. But you made a number of posts talking about the idea of being a spiritual experience, at having the female experience, being a spiritual being, having the female experience. Maybe you want to comment on that more.
I kind of noticed there was like I had to go like all the way, like both pendulums, right? Like I was probably feminist, and then like when I saw what was happening with society, I tried to go like pro patriarchy, and then like I got shit on and like offended by so many men that I was like like y'all are off, like you're off base on some stuff, and so I've come back to the middle there. But there is like, I don't know, there does seem to be like a divine feminine wrath that's like come upon society, is what I sense was happening. This whole like, I don't know, it's gone. I don't know, just since COVID, like I did kind of sense that there is like just there, and the mother, right? Like people have this idea of mother as just being so like nurturing and caring and like breastfeeding you or whatever, but like she's also the destroyer. Like I think about the rap lyrics, right? Always going back to Cali, and like they live like this life of thuggery, and then they go back to Cali because they're being like the West is associated with the death, with the West Side, and so there it's.
Oh my
like,
God, that's so insane.
The Great
That's
Destroyer.
so how did I ever miss that? Like, so you're like, that's the thing that, so when Jim Morrison says the West is the best in the end, he's referring to like what Burroughs referred to as the Western land in Egyptian mysticism, right?
Yeah.
The West is the underworld. It never occurred to me that Cali, like we're going back to Cali. Oh,
Thug
man.
Life.
Oh shit, that's crazy. Yeah, wow. Okay, you just blew my mind a little bit. But
well, it's been coming up a lot because the Pope, right? And I forget who did the video. I wanted to find it, but there's a synchead that I follow, and they're pretty upset about the Pope. I think because they're raised Protestant, essentially, but they think, oh, hey, these Catholics are so, look how creepy they are. They're worshiping the goddess. They're interested in the divine feminine. They're bringing up Mary, right? And this kind of gets back to that idea of what is the feminine side of God, of the Elohim, because there's the Asherah, which I did another video talking about the Asura and the Suras, and this idea that there's Asherah is the wife of God. So you have the worship of the wife of God is Sophia, philosophy, the love of Sophia, but also you have Eris, right, and discord. This idea that she is the source of wisdom, but also this golden fruit, that sows discord. The fruit of knowledge is this apple of Eris, is this discord. So femininity is it's this cruel mistress, Mother Nature, that is creative, destructive, wise, and crazy all at once, right? Which sounds like most of my favorite women.
Yeah.
Is that the graph of the hot to crazy?
Yeah, the crazy hot Matrix.
Speaking of Anna Nicole Smith, right? I mean, doesn't she fit into that kind of archetype of she's so just being. She was so just being the thing.
It's weird how much I think about Anna Nicole Smith. I mean, she comes up in my life, in my mind, she seems like a sync archetype.
Yeah, well, I loved her. I loved how she was just so brazen about like whatever she was, right? She was like, yeah, I don't know. She's just such a shameless kind of like the gold digging, and then she's just like fat and drunk or whatever she was. She was just like so.
She was fun when she was fat. That is totally true. It was great watching her get stuck underneath her own table that time. I remember.
There's an incredible documentary. I mean, there's a lot of documentaries on Anna Nicole Smith, but there's one in particular about the making of that Tower movie that was a play on or satire even on Die Hard. So like Die Hard's also a 9/11 resonator, right? In certain ways with the Nakatomi Plaza, whatever. But like I don't know if you've seen that, where she's playing the equivalent of Bruce Willis in Die Hard, and she's like running around in this building. But that movie is one thing in the first place, but there is a making of that movie that's kind of hard to find that I've seen before. That's just like, oh my God, it was a C movie, you know what I mean? Like maybe even D movie or double D movie, but it was just like
double D, triple D.
It's one of those movies that's just like so bad that it's literally great. Like it's ridiculously entertaining. But yeah, and
that was a movie that she was in. Was it like a soft porn?
Yeah, it was like a softcore like Skinamax movie, and it was about.
I think I saw it like when I was like 18.
Totally. Yeah. I think she's like in a jumpsuit throughout it. She's just like running around, sneaking around this building with these terrorists in it or whatever. Yeah, I don't know what it's called.
Illegal Aliens, Hudson Proxy.
No.
Earlier, it would have been like before all this. This is all.
It's in there somewhere.
How long ago? 95?
98? Maybe. Whoa, crazy. She's in something called Supertramp, You Win, I Lose. If you think about the Supertramp prefaced in America and Crime of the Century, the way that those are related in terms of
and the 9/11 connection,
right? Because if you mirror Supertramp's prefaced in America, it makes it so that it literally says 9 and 11 on top of the two two towers there. So with the orange juice too, which is like totally trading places. These guys made a killing on orange juice today. But yeah, from the view from a airplane window, right? So and it's like Lady Liberty with the orange juice. But yeah, but also Crime of the Century is a play on the on Superman 2 when they're imprisoned in the monolith, which is a play on 2001: A Space Odyssey. So the actual like the song of Also Spake Zarathustra, that's the one, I think.
To the Limit for sure. ex-CIA agent,
yeah. Is that it? I think
it's got to be.
I don't know if it's got to be.
Well, I mean, it's the one where she's an ex-CIA agent and she's going around the building. I remember this movie.
She's going around
too.
the building. Okay, that is it. Okay, yeah, totally.
Written by Joey Travolta. I gotta know more. What's even happening right now? Oh my god.
Oh, boy.
Crazy. Beverly Hills Cop 3 to the Limit. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was terrible.
Always jump in here. You got it. It's crazy.
Speaking of the orange juice, like, have you seen any of the posts I did on the color orange, like the orange symbolism in this matrix?
No, let me do it right now. I'll find it.
No? Oh, yeah. I started to come up with a lot of kind of downloads about just like what orange represents, right? Like Trump comes up on, he's like literally painted orange. Like there's no mistake. That's not like a bad like self-tanner or whatever. Like he paints himself orange. But there's like he came after Obama, right? And we had that prison show.
Oh, you've got good stuff.
Black. And so yeah, orange is the new black. We had Agent Orange. We have like orange is the color of the prison jumpsuits.
Not for
Clockwork Orange prison jumpsuits.
Clockwork Orange. So like orange, like I feel like this matrix communicates to us through all the symbolism, particularly in my opinion through like corporate symbolism, like the brands and the foods and the logos and everything that we see.
The House of Orange, right?
Yeah, that's like the Netherlands, right? Like when you think about like the underworld, like drugs.
Jacobin. So the Netherlands also, because the Netherlands are the underlands. That's what Netherland means. So it's because they're like topographically under, but also turbans and tulips because they're originally the Arabic influence place. There's the Tartary. And so Spinoza and all of these things like atheism comes out of there. But the Rockefeller family are supposedly connected to the House of Orange and George Washington because of the Jacobins. So the Jacobins are connected to the House of Orange in France as well. And we're against Napoleon. So there is a lot of weird connections there. Plus Orange County is Anaheim is Disneyland and Orange County, Florida for Disney World. Right.
Hey, can I just do oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I know. I'm going to take a second. You go ahead.
Well, I guess I was going to say that like tulips are vaginal, right? And so like if we're thinking about like Netherlands and there's like, it's known for like red light districts and sex, right? So that's all like underground trafficking. Like we're all coming out this world through the vagina.
Tulips.
But also like the navel, right? Like we always talk of like navel oranges are the type of oranges that we tend to eat or sell. And so like the navel is also like the belly, and then you get into like semen because there's like the naval officers and stuff. And so now I feel like Thomas is gonna start looking at me weird.
Oh, no,
but anyway,
Thomas knows all about what the Navy officers do with the whole licking of the belly button. What's the thing where they pull the people out of the navel? I've seen that.
Oh, and plus the crossing ritual where everyone plays up in drag because it doesn't count if you're like crossing the equator.
Right.
And you got to eat oranges, otherwise you get scurvy when you're doing the crossing ritual.
I mean, if you're alone on a boat that far away from everybody else, you're going to do some weird stuff. Let's be honest. There's no law. There's no law except for what the captain says. It's crazy out there. Look at this. Look at when men were men, right? When men were men and they wore high heels.
O.J. Simpson, right? We had like our biggest killer was like the name of orange juice.
Or O.J. Totally. Yeah. Oh my god.
Anyway, sorry. I was just gonna say like I think orange represents like dreams, prison, and kind of like where we're born, like the way that we're born into this world. But anyway, go ahead, David. Take it away.
I got a million things on my mind. I don't know how much to say.
I'm thinking about Capricorn 1 because O.J. Simpson's in a movie that has a lot of orange in it, which is about faking the Mars landing, right? Or faking the moon landing.
Mars and orange.
Yeah, and the whole thing.
Capricorn, Saturn.
Everything about this movie kind of like was pretty crazy. If you have you seen Capricorn 1 and they have to fake the Mars landing. Is essentially about how they would have faked the moon landing. And
I gotta think with "Wish You Were Here" with this, but yeah.
Essentially, like anyone who finds out what's going on gets disappeared by the CIA and their brakes get cut. And yeah, it's interesting because there's this scene where this van is driving without the brakes, and just think about OJ later on driving a very similar vehicle, trying on the highway 405 trying to get away.
Who was also representative of a car company, right? He was a Hertz sort of spokesman.
Yeah, Hertz Karma, right?
Ooh, weird.
Hertz donuts. I'm just kidding.
And also Hertz because Hertz is hearts, right? So the heart in the heart of the matter, right? Oh, you had so many. I want to go back to some of those posts you had. Sorry, for some reason I have these pictures open of white people playing Asians because I was thinking about how many new movies have essentially done the opposite, where they have like we haven't changed at all because now you have black people playing white characters, but that's not very different than having white people play black characters or Asian characters, which is kind of nothing's changed in our society, it seems like. But yeah, you're
going
orange.
Back to black.
Yeah, back to black, and orange is the new black.
Except Al Jolson was an advocate, technically.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. Also, you had something about monarch, right? It was the ancient word for butterfly is Psyche, soul of the dead. In October, the orange and black monarch butterfly migrates south to Mexico, who celebrate their Day of the Dead November 1st. The butterflies hibernate in the Arbol de Navidad, Christmas, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting because monarch programming associated with orange and with death. I mean, that's pretty good. You got to admit.
And generational trauma is also part of monarch programming, right? And like that's like the monarch butterfly takes 4 life cycles to make it for a full migration.
Monarch programming works as a sync resonator more than it does like if you're actually getting into real conspiracy stuff. Like, because Kathy O'Brien, like she's like I don't trust her testimony, like if you want to call it testimony, because it's not like an official thing or whatever. Tracy Twyman did a book with interviewing her, and I really love Tracy and I can appreciate it, but it's more become like a sync resonator than anything. Like even in Kathy O'Brien's own communication around it, she says it's not about the butterfly, it's about it is about the butterfly. I forget. How did she say it?
I think there's a strong
monarchy. So she's relating to the monarchy, right? And then relating to the idea of the way that the butterfly would literally, like the butterfly flapping its wings, that connected to what would happen with the subjects in the programming when they were in the trauma state of what their minds would literally do, like as a butterfly
chaos theory.
Yeah, I don't know. Kathy O'Brien's a whole other giant rabbit hole, and a lot of people got really excited about her because she confirmed the David Icke like reptilian thing when she was just like, yeah, reptilians from another dimension, like controlling the world leaders, including the Queen and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know. I'm more like you got 300 people who testified like in a formal testimony, like for MK Ultra as MK Ultra victims. Like you don't have to like speculate on the things like that they presented because it's like 100% documented and proven and whatever. Whereas Kathy O'Brien is kind of like, I don't know. And then what Vigilant Citizen does with that, where they're like every single Hollywood movie, it's just Monarch, subliminal. Like it doesn't do it for me. Sorry.
I knew Vigilant Citizen back in the early 2000s, but like when we were both just making music, not even talking about conspiracy theories and stuff. But Nicole just mentioned the concept of it takes like 4 generations for some of the monarch butterflies to make their entire migratory pattern, and that is the part that comes up a lot in not the MK Ultra stuff because that's proven. The Project Monarch, which as far as I know has never been proven, but if you read Fritz Springmeier's book about how to create an undetectable mind control Illuminati slave or whatever that title is, he makes a pretty decent case, maybe not directly, but that the monarch butterflies also represent this concept of epigenetic memory, that if you can traumatize someone in a family line, then their offspring can slip into a trance easier than if their parents hadn't been traumatized. And if you can do that for 4 or 5 different generations, then essentially you create this perfect moon child that can just be taken over at will because it has this epigenetic trauma-based programming that's kind of been like prepping it for this new life. And I've always understood that as the tie between monarch programming, because monarchs do have a way that they're somehow passing down the next step on the map to their kids without being able to communicate it.
You guys know there's certain themes in Polanski films. One is the like thematic like reoccurrences where an object will land in wood directly and stay vertical, where it's like in Rosemary's Baby, it's the knife drops and it stays vertical. In Bitter Moon, it's a syringe that lands and stays vertical. It happens over and over again. Another theme in Polanski films is oranges dropping and rolling around. Like he just does it repeatedly, and you can see it in the Tenant where it drops when he has there's a big revelatory thing that happens, and it happens at the beginning and it happens at the end because it has a flashback after the context of how we've arrived at it, and the whole movie becomes this crazy paradox. But it's also, there's a mind control theme in relationship to the oranges dropping. In the Ninth Gate, the oranges roll down these stairs. It's just like why is he showing us that? Why does he go back and forth between witchcraft or sorcery, right, and CIA programming? Like if you see Death in the Maiden, like that, it is about MK Ultra. It's about an MK Ultra victim who would be the equivalent of Dr. Green in reality, like shows up as Ben Kingsley with Sigourney Weaver. And it's this question in the whole thing. The theme throughout is she crazy? Or is this really what happened? Turns out, spoiler alert, she's not crazy. Just like in Rosemary's Baby, she's not crazy. But it's like he does this communication that's like, it's not so subliminal. Like if you catch the themes, like when these things happen that reoccur throughout his films, he's making the same point from a different route. Like if you look at Ghost Writer, the movie with Ewan McGregor and Pierce Brosnan, like that movie is about a CIA assassin who we don't know is a CIA assassin through the whole movie. And we find out at the end, sorry, spoiler alert, but like this movie, Ghost Rider, it ends with CIA like manuscript play. Like the credits are presented as though they're documents. And this is crazy. Like if you start this movie at the beginning of the Ninth Gate, it moves through gates through the beginning credits, right? If you start this movie when it goes through the Ninth Gate and you play them together, then both films will cut to credits at the same moment. The credits for the Ninth Gate are just fire. Like you have fire with the credits rolling. While Ghost Rider has CIA documents. So the end of the Ghost Rider is literally like the proof that this person was a CIA assassin. It gets blown away. So no one's going to know the truth of the matter. And then the credits roll as CIA documents, and then the other one is just fire. So it's as though he's communicating that the documents are being burned up. And that he's relating things that he actually is hip to. This is why he was such a target. I'm not making excuses. I'm just objectively, like, he did the same shit that people have been doing in Hollywood for freaking ever. And he became the scapegoat of everything, to be like, oh, we caught the guy. Like, it's almost to just make everyone be like, oh, okay, well, something's being done about the weird stuff that's going on in Hollywood, right? So it's like he became the epitome of that target, while he was the one who happened to be almost more than anyone blowing the whistle symbolically or whatever, but like really overtly with his filmmaking. So it's kind of crazy that it's like, why isn't Jack Nicholson being gone after, when Jack Nicholson, it was his freaking house of the thing that happened with Samantha Geimer. So it's like, who had a tunnel to the Playboy Mansion at the house. Like, there's no mention of any of that from the media when we were all when the media is like digging into it. It's like, why didn't they talk about all the other levels and everyone else that's implicated? And it's the same thing with the Manson stuff. It's like, that was weird Hollywood underground stuff. Like, there's no mention that Susan Atkins was with the Satanic Church shortly before and like participated in this ritual where she's on LSD in a coffin with these like celebrities in the room and all this stuff. Like, when the media was going crazy about it, why didn't they talk about any of that? It just doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, sorry, it's a tangent. But.
That's so weird, because with the Hollywood CIA connection, and then that is called Ghost Rider, and we call all our CIA agents spooks, right? Like,
right.
Like, spook is the term for a CIA agent, and they're doing these ghost writing bizarro stories.
Yeah, well, that movie's a play on Tony Blair. So I used to say you could have called Ghost Writer the Tony Blair Witch Project, because it's like the character is obviously supposed to be Tony Blair, but then there's another level to it, saying that there's more to the picture than the way the media and the media machine is treating it. And it's all about PR. Like Ewan McGregor's job is there to do PR. And like we've discussed here, the original Star Wars prequels, how they are all about false flag terrorism, with the Phantom Menace is literally false flag terrorism and all this kind of stuff.
You brought this up also in your thing.
Yeah.
That MAGA is the 5th highest degree of the Satanic Temple. That was another important one.
I think it's interesting in terms of like the divine feminine. Like the altar supposedly for Satanic Church is the female body. So to me, that's an interesting thing, is like that the vessel through which we all come is like the highest altar of the Satanic Church, which also to me, like, because isn't like their birthday, like the birthday is like one of the highest celebrated holidays for the Satanic. I don't know. Like I'm not an expert on
at least in Levain's Satanism, your birthday is like Christmas, right? Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know. To me, sometimes I think some of this like satanic stuff is a joke on us, because we're like, ooh, bad Satan, and then we're like fully satanic, like in so many ways. Like when you read the 7 tenets, they're like so reasonable. That's it. They're rational, right? But they deny the spirit, or they deny the supernatural.
Right, they're secular values and they're utilitarian in nature, and we've been brought to the point where we accept them completely. I mean,
as a society,
but they're not that bad. I hate to be the guy who says that, but like, because it sounds like we live in a patriarchy. Otherwise,
the joke with Crowley, right? Was that everything that made him the wickedest man at his time, that people would point to of what was going on in Italy and stuff, is like totally like normalized today with like rock musicians and stuff. So like as far as like Led Zeppelin went, they were like, oh, he's basically, or the Beatles even, it's like they're like, oh, so what made him so evil was stuff we just like accept as like normal now, like for the most part.
Who hasn't assaulted their nanny? Come on.
Well, the nanny thing was about what? How did that go? How did he get out of that?
He was like 12, and he like assaulted his nanny, and because it was the nanny, and isn't that the story?
Well, no, the story goes that he ahead of time he planned it, that he wanted to have sex with the nanny, so he wanted to make a pass at the nanny. It's as simple as that. But that he went to the tobacco store and said, "Hey, if my parents or anybody asks if I got tobacco here, that you sold me tobacco, you say yes." He didn't even buy tobacco. He just told the owner of the place that if anybody calls you and asks you, you tell them yeah. So then when he went to, so he planned that so that when he made a pass at the nanny, if she told on him, if she didn't go for it, if he didn't get laid and everything was secret and whatever, then his way out would be to say that people would believe him if he said he was doing something wrong that would be the lesser crime. So that would have been a big crime for him to say, oh, you tried to hit on the nanny. So he said, no, I couldn't have done that. I was out trying to get tobacco at the tobacco store. And then the parents, obviously, they're going to ask the guy at the tobacco store, and he goes, yeah, he was here, and they're like, oh, shit. And so they fired the nanny. And then he didn't reveal it until years later in his writing that that's what happened.
Shitty.
Former life. I don't know. I also remember that Crowley was a very Christian person who was dying, right? Because his family had kept him restrained from vices, and then he was dying because he was malnourished. So they gave him to his uncle and said, give him a good show on his way out, so to speak. Have him see prostitutes, have him eat sugar cakes, and have him drink and smoke cigars. And then he started getting healthier. And he's like, wait, so all the things that were supposedly bad for me were, good for me, and all the things I was doing that I thought were good were killing me? I mean, that I think was a major inversion of his entire ethos at a very young age.
And then he was like, now let's go climb a mountain. Don't worry, I won't leave you behind.
Right. Yeah. What do you think about Britney Spears, hieroglyphs and the dance moves? What do you think's going on there? Anna, Nicole, Wordsmith.
Oh, I think there's okay, so when I was watching Donnie Darko, I noticed that there's a big emphasis on there's a slight emphasis on the little sisters dance performances, right? And that
I think it's huge. It's huge. They even had to redo it, and they were upset about the music, and they were so upset they couldn't use the right music. So they, Richard Kelly had to change the music because it was such an important. Yeah, it's a big deal.
I didn't realize that at all. it got me thinking about the OA, because I remember I kind of like sometimes felt like I was like my own OA. Like I was trying to put together my own like special ops team to get me the fuck off this dimension. But I was thinking about how they had to do like a certain set of like ritual moves. And then during COVID, right? Like when things got so weird and we had all those TikTok nurses doing their little synchronized dances together, and how after that, like reality shifted, right? Like nothing went back to normal after COVID. Like something has changed. Time has changed. Like the static. I don't know. You said they don't do 5G in Dresden, Andreas? Is that what you said?
I think
my internet. Yeah, and I'm having a hard time with my internet because of that. Yeah, all 5G. But, maybe it's a good thing. I don't know yet. I feel like it's hard to tell. Yeah, I got used to 5G because around the time of COVID, I was in right before COVID, all of 2019, I was in Spain, and in Spain they were saying, they said in 2017 that 5G was going to roll out in 2020. So, but by the time that happened, there were already hundreds of pilot cities that had 5G. So all of Spain basically was under 5G, and it was incredible how much coverage there was for 5G. And there's certain impediments being made to keep it happening in certain places where it seems like they just want to have super healthy people, right? That's the argument, but it's interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. There's something very weird about Britney Spears, like looking like a demon and dancing in front of that camera all day, every day. Like there's something very bizarre about the Britney Spears like dancing thing. I don't know what it is.
That she was a public figure who was always a public figure, and she went to talk about like the transition from like 2001 to 2020, right? Where it's like she is just now a TikTok always alone. She's like doing what we did in 2020, and she just doesn't stop. That's like her reality. It looks very isolated, right? So it's just like you went from being just all out there to now you're totally consolidated. It's the difference between Donnie Darko as a predictor for 9/11. They made them change the font for the ending credits of Donnie Darko because they looked too Arabic, and they didn't want to have that association because the timing in which it came out. So it's producers like, hey, we had this before, and they're like, oh, sorry, and the plain symbolism and everything, and like all that stuff, like people have tripped out. Like there's a guy on Twitter, we should probably have him on here, who went by Donnie Darkened. I think he's Donnie Discerned or whatever, where he's connecting the Donald Trump Back to the Future thing with Donnie Darko and how all this connects. But then if you look at it, same guy, Jake Gyllenhaal, like he was Bubble Boy, which is Rapunzel, which is the isolated COVID story, right? So it's like, and that's like, it's weird. It's almost like his archetype. Like those two movies kind of like show you that the connections between a 2001 predictor and a COVID hysteria predictor. You know what I mean? Like COVID-19, even like that is COVID-19 and 9/11. You know what I mean?
There was 19 hijackers, right?
Yeah, everything. It's so insane.
Well, I really like the sync here between Donnie Darko and OA and Corona, because the OA,
please don't over Sky, right?
That dance that they were doing, or whatever those movements are, is based on Carlos Castaneda, and I can't remember exactly what it's called, but the whole premise of why they make those movements in those ways is because they're trying to kind of harvest all of the dormant energy in between, like the inside of your elbow and in between your fingers, like all these places that energy finds itself, and then you're not like activating those areas. And in the OA, they're kind of harvesting all of that latent energy that's been building up their entire lives, and then they use it together in some way. The same way that if you're talking about the TikTok nurses dancing, right? You've got all these people dormant that haven't been utilizing their energy in any productive way. And now here's a way through social media that's like forcing them to harvest. Like here's how you do the dance. Here's how you harvest your own energy, and then give it to us. And we know how to like magnify it and make use of it. Like you're just dancing in a hospital. You're not doing anything with it, but they can turn that into like a huge movement and kind of, I don't know. I love whenever OA comes up, that's what I think about.
Jan Irving gave me shit at one point because I shared a story from my youth that was like traumatic, and he's like, "Oh, you're really messed up, man," or whatever. But I'm just, I'm transparent with my life and whatever. I have no, whatever. But I had I went to a like heavy duty like academic Christian school growing up. My mom was a Jew for Jesus. And so she sent me to this school, and they'd have us do these musicals. Like I had chapel 6 days a week throughout my entire childhood, including summer, right? So like, and then later I went through ministerial training and whatever, and then I studied with a rabbi. But anyway, not my whole life story. We had to do these things where we would do these musicals, and there was one that was about Joshua and the walls of Jericho and all this stuff. And when we would sing, they would have us do these different movements to correspond to it, just like where you have to do it all in all together, all the same. And I remember I have a memory of, I think it was 2nd or 3rd grade, they sent me to a psychiatrist after this for a minute, and they tried to put me on meds, and I screamed and I cried, and I didn't end up happening, and I'm very grateful and glad that I didn't have to go on fucking medication. But I had an incident happen where they had us doing these movements, and one of them was put a hand here for a song about Joshua. And I remember feeling so trapped that I was like, I have to do this thing or I'll get punished. Like I have to participate in this thing. But it's also in the lyrics that we were having to repeat was asserting what we believe. And I didn't know what was what. So I felt really conflicted on a stage in front of my whole school and all the parents and everything, where we had to do these movements while we're saying what we believe. And I knew if I tried to get out of it, that it wasn't allowed. And I knew that if I stayed, I felt disempowered. And so when we did these movements, I ended up slapping myself in the face and like hitting myself because I didn't want to be there. And I wanted people to see that I was not happy and I was not okay. And there was such a big deal. They made such a big deal out of like, oh, he hurt, but and then years later, I was on LSD at a Marilyn Manson concert, and I went into I had like a recursive kind of thing. Like I went back, I re-experienced like where I was at a child. Like I remembered being in that position, and I basically was like, you know what? Everyone around me after that all made it into that I was a problem, that it was all about me. And I realized in this moment, in the psychedelic state during a full lunar eclipse, actually, I realized that it made total sense that I would respond that way as a child in that position. And I was like, no, everyone around me was crazy. Everyone around me was crazy. What I did was in my position as a child was a reasonable thing. And so and so I was standing there, and I felt like this huge reconciliation of I had kind of repressed that memory, and it was oh no, that was wrong with me, and I kind of forgave myself and forgave them for being freaking insane. I was surrounded by a lot of crazy people, and I made them uncomfortable by reflecting back what they were doing to me. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm grateful for all my life experiences like that, it's what they've taught me or whatever. But it's just, and also that was the thing when 2020 happened and people were being all hysterical, it really reminded me of what my schooling was like. Whereas you're going to tell me what I need to believe or else. You have to go along with our program. And if you don't, you are not okay. You're messed up. And it's and the whole time I'm no, you guys are being messed up. And I have family in Sweden. I visited there. I was just looking, I was dude, we loved Sweden before because they had the best healthcare, right? That was the progressive position. And now we're going to go crazy demonizing them and all the levels of reflection that Sweden was doing. I was don't we want a control group in the world? In some way, in some aspect of
but
thing?
not Sweden, Zimbabwe, or something like that.
Right.
What about the Nicole? You have this really interesting one talking about CERN, and I love this one. This idea that the Hadron Collider somewhat resembles Dante's nine
levels of hell.
Dante's 9 levels of hell. It's crazy. Did you have any thought? What were you thinking on this one? How do you feel about this? Sync you discovered?
I definitely feel we are living in the inferno, in terms of it's like I said, it's more of it's also a comedic roast. I mean, there's a lot of suffering and stuff here, and I think maybe some of our choices that we make determine where we end up on the level, whether we level up or not in this this game called life. But Yeah, I think that the Hadron Collider definitely plays some sort of role. There was something I did on it where I think the first time they fired it up was at 10:28 a.m. And that 10:28 code has been like, there's a lot of stuff that's gone on with the like the movie with Tom Hanks about Dante's Inferno. I think it's just called Inferno, but it was about COVID. Essentially, it was about a billionaire who like creates a virus to wipe off like a big chunk of humanity. It was starring Tom Hanks, and that came out on 10/28, which is also Bill Gates' birthday. So there was just like, and there's also like a scene in that 17 Again movie with Matthew, the guy who died, Matthew Perry.
Matthew McConaughey? Matthew Perry.
No, Matthew Perry. When he like, the minute that he like falls into the water and like dies, it shows the time on his car dash, and it's 10:28 when that happens.
Wait, you said 17 Again?
Yeah.
Is that a play on 16 Again with freaking George Burns? And Anita Morris?
I thought it was, maybe I'm getting it wrong.
Yeah, this is no. You got it right. This is a remake of a George Burns movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But there's something about that 10:28 code, and I think David, your birthday is 12/8, right? 128.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's like, it's almost the same numerically, right? With the when you strike the 0 out of there, because there's a lot that's like 128 too.
Yeah, it's Jim Morrison's birthday, and it's John Lennon's death day, and it's in a Catholic holy day called the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, which is interesting in terms of Rosemary's Baby and the Dakota and all of that. Yeah,
it's like also the official first day of World War II, right?
That's right. Yeah, the war was declared December 8th.
Yeah, because
there's
my daughter was born at 128.
It's pretty deep into 10:28. I never noticed this too, but like all of the identification cards.
Oh shoot!
I had no idea about that. Interesting.
Yeah, this is crazy. I had no idea either. But I was thinking the 6 realms of samsara in Tibetan Buddhism also, because that seems to be pretty well connected to the CERN Hadron Collider, Dante's Inferno idea, the multiple samsara window here.
Oh yeah, well, because they have Shiva the Destroyer outside of the statue, right? Isn't that what's out there?
Yeah, there was a gift from India. Yeah, they were just like, which is a joke, obviously, of sorts, but it's also kind of, I don't know, a serious joke. If that makes sense. It's like,
well, and we always relate India to IT.
Constellation.
Like in terms of the Matrix, we think about India as like IT support, right? Like whenever we're like calling the help desk or whatever, like we consider it.
The Vindaloo?
In a Vindaloo, like South Park. Yeah.
Oh my god, that is my favorite freaking South Park of all time. No, please listen to me. You're in it. I can't do it. You know what I'm talking about? You guys want the Butters episode where Cartman tricked Butters to think that he's in virtual reality, but then it turns out that like. Yeah.
Oh my god!
The only people who understand it are the Indians. Oh, it's really important. You have to see it because the entire time the kids don't realize whether something's real or whether something's not real, and they're walking around reality thinking it's an illusion. But then there's illusions they're experiencing which are actually real, and the only people who get it are the Indians who do tech support, and they're trying to explain that you're in a Vindaloo right now the entire time.
Oh my god! And Elon Musk was wearing that tech support shirt. Remember when he he became like White House tech support?
Oh,
right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Here it is right here. For sure.
He's freaking bummed right now, dude. Just saying.
Why? What am I missing? Sorry, I didn't hear about it.
Well, he commented to somebody saying their view of what's happening with him right now, because it sure looks like all the work that Doge did, that he's put all this intention into to make these cuts happen, that the GOP just completely screwed him over. And it was just like there's no incorporating of all the things that he went to the trouble to uncover. So he put all this money and time and energy into this thing, and they're just like, they did what the DNC would do during the primaries, where they're just like, man, screw you anyway. And you're just like, what? And it seems so unbelievable. So he's just saying, I'm not going to be putting money into politics anymore, or, because what's the point? So he's just really disillusioned, His
problem was doing it for free, because when you do something for free for someone, they don't value it. If he had charged money for it, now they'd be responsible to actually do something with that. But now you just come away like making him look like an idiot.
Yeah, well, you know what? Story of my life a little bit.
Yeah.
It's okay.
What do you have any thoughts on Elon Musk? What do you think, Nicole, about the Elon?
I mean, I definitely think he's playing some like giant role in like in terms of the simulation. Vanilla Sky, like that's what that's from, right? Tech support is from Vanilla Sky.
Yeah, which was Hitler, by the way, with John Cusack. So like, there's the movie Max, where that guy who plays the tech support, he played Hitler as the artist before he becomes the
what?
dictator.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
I mean, he's in a lot of other stuff, but that's like, for me, that's the symbolism is pretty crazy. But yeah, and you know that this is the first movie that Tom Cruise did following Eyes Wide Shut. It originally, the ending of it had the two towers in the background, and there was a debate because they're filming it in New York when 9/11 happened, and then when they released the film, there's a question: should they remove the two towers? But what's crazy is that this movie is based on another movie, also with Penelope Cruz, Tom Cruise, Penelope Cruz. So he was with. Sorry to jump all over the place, but he was with what's her name from Eyes Wide Shut?
Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman, and he was set up with her through Scientology, right? And she's hooked up through the organization, but then he ended up with Penelope Cruz following his relationship with Nicole Kidman. So it gets kind of weird, but that movie's called Open Your Eyes, the movie that Vanilla Sky was based on. So it went from Open Your Eyes to Eyes Wide Shut to Vanilla Sky. And so he jumps off the building at the end, which is connected to, obviously, 9/11 with, you know, even if you're just talking about like Tom Hanks with that incredibly loud and whatever it was, where he's one of the guys who his son thinks jumped out of the two towers as they're going down, because you see the falling man, the hanged man pose, you know, like it's just, I don't know, I'm going all over the place, but yeah, it's super layered.
Yeah, right. You said that. I have to just point out there's another falling man connection here with Anna Nicole Smith, who is in Hudsucker Proxy. And didn't Tim Robbins jump out and he becomes the falling man?
Oh shit, good point. That's right. And also that she's in the Tower movie that we were just talking about, whatever that was called. But yeah. No, it's super appropriate. And even like her life is like its own like 9/11, right? Like just like the build up and the collapse and everything. And we all watched it, you know, she had like that reality show where you're just like, oh my God, so we're just gonna watch this lady's pill-laden life shit show. Like, this is just totally whatever. Yeah. Wow.
You also got this talking about like God's words written on tablets, like their tombstones. You know, this idea also that like life and death, the law of God is, you know, on the way in, like the birth, but on the way out, you know, the law of God maybe is connected to death. Do you have thoughts on death versus life?
Yeah, I think I'm really polarized. Like, I might be a kind of a creep, right? But I feel like the things I'm polarized to are very much like death and sex. Like, I think there's like, I mean, the French term for orgasm, right, is like petite mort, which is a little death, like, because your body, like, your soul, like, leaves your body for a split second when you, I guess that's what they say. But so yeah, there's something like deeply entwined between like sex, death, and religion. Like to be born is to die, right? Because you can't die unless you're like born into this earth. And so it's just like this loop. I don't know about like the Old Testament. I don't know. I'm struggling through that right now. I'm sure David could teach me a lot about the Old Testament, but I read it and I'm like, what is this book? Like, what the fuck? Like these people are animals and they're like terrible. And there's like, and like, even like God is like, I'm like, what? So I'm super confused about the Old Testament, but
now things would happen in nature and then people are like explaining it. So like even the idea of tetragrammaton is like the elements. So it's like, oh, there was this cataclysm that happened, you know, like Andreas would say a mud flood or whatever. You have these different things that take place and then they're like, oh, how do we illustrate that? Well, it was this entity that, you know, but yeah, no, that is nature itself, you know, and you have got that level of what God is, and then you have the Godhead that's beyond that. So in Kabbalah you'd say Ein Sof, but then you have these emanations where things come into form from etheric to gross. And so gross physical matter exudes birth, growth, decay, and death, whereas like the supernal realm it has no duality. It's unchanging. So there's always that distinction. And the way that God is treated, are we talking now about the elements, like with which earth would be a combination of the other three, right, where they all come into one expression? And there's that whole idea. But then beyond that, what is the directive, like the supernal directive? So yeah.
That's funny. Gross anatomy, gross salary. There's like,
right, with Matthew Modine, Gross Anatomy, great film. Private
I'm
Joker.
on that wave that. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. If you can.
No, he gave him.
Oh no, he's Max Headrumming out again.
Every time. I was just thinking about how the breath exists before us, and then we're sandcastles made of stardust, so the breath goes through us, and we're thinking we're breathing the breath, but really the breath is breathing us. And that seems to be something that's in the Ein Sof, as well, that we're just kind of turned up and turned around. But a big part of it is the necessity of mutation, right? So the feminine is looking for the most intriguing mutation because it's predicting the future as best it can by holding on to the past. So the feminine archetype is to maintain something. It's like less prone to mutation, but it chooses which mutations to carry on, right? And so sex, life, and death, of course, these are kind of the enemies of transhumanism or maybe posthumanism, because they're moving towards a world where there's no reason to even have those, transitions be controlled or gate kept. Maybe you could say gate kept by women. So you see, this is also part of transgenderism, and then this is also a major part of, like the Rosicrucian hermaphrodite Hermes Trismegistus path is that the masculine can absorb and become the feminine, and the feminine is maybe allowed to become masculine, but it's also made irrelevant by transhumanism, right? It's kind of the destruction of the divine feminine.
Right. Well, what the homunculus was about too. Like the alchemical homunculus was about being able to sustain and create life without the feminine.
Right.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind that Kubrick, when he addressed that in the treatments for what became AI, which is totally Spielberg's thing is totally different than what he was conceiving, but he made the distinction between the homunculus, like you say, the golem, and what he was describing with AI, where he's saying this is not the same thing, because with the golem you're still talking about being a co-creator, because this is about manifesting something through the elementals, through the elements, right? Whereas with the AI, it's mecha versus orga, right? So he's like, that was about the organism. This is about something that we're manufacturing, which, even though the materials that we're using to manufacture this, but he's like, it is a different thing, so he wanted to emphasize that, that we're not literally like creating it through the same process, where he's like, you'd literally do an organic process. So Kubrick was right. I got this in his own handwriting from the Elephant and Castle Archives in London, where he's basically saying, he describes the process to make a homunculus and how it involved cow dung and all this other stuff, that you write this word on his forehead and you're bringing it to life and you're animating. It's like Pinocchio, right? Where he's like, but here we have this Pinocchio that's not done through the same way. It's a something that's more made by the mind in a different route, through the intellect, that's not coming through with a soul. Like there's no soul in it, so that would be the distinction. But yeah, no, he's a stickler for that.
I also think naturalism. So there's a thing called, I forget what it's called, like Freico-Perculture, which is like nudism in German culture. But I grew up in Santa Cruz, where a lot of people are, we don't wear clothes all the time. My family walk around the house naked. It's not as cool as you think it is. But,
No.
I remember going to church and they're saying, and, this happened where Adam and Eve, your ancestors from your bloodline, they ate this fruit, and now that's why you're embarrassed to be naked. I'm like, I'm not. I don't. And so this came up this morning. I woke up reminded of that feeling I had as a kid, that I was like, this says to me that I'm not descendant from Adam and Eve, because I'm not ashamed and I don't like fruit. Like either way.
It's your relationship to knowledge, right? Because it's all about, do you become insecure when you find out that you don't know something? And it's the point at which children stop developing in the same way, where they're so receptive, they can learn a language so quick, they can take in all these ideas, but as soon as they become self-conscious about not knowing something, it halts that ability to be receptive and to learn the same way. So that's the idea, is that you introduce knowledge of being like, it's directly connected to sex, right? The same way that people would experience insecurity around not being experienced is the same way that they feel insecurity around not knowing something. If you look at social media, the greatest sin you can commit is to admit or have it be shown that you don't know something, because knowledge and sex are completely connected. Like there is Jung's patient who became a actual psychoanalyst. One of her big contributions to psychoanalysis was the acknowledgement that the sex instinct is completely connected to the death instinct. So like that, basically, like our will towards our own destruction is totally connected to our drive towards getting laid, which is what the military takes advantage of in people when they have like in the Marine Corps, when they have them naming their guns a female name, and they're substituting getting laid with getting a kill. So as if they're using what was discovered in psychoanalysis, that there's kind of this subliminal thing going on that we're not always conscious of the directive. So they know that we have this propensity towards wanting to stay home and roll in the rye. And if we're not going to do that, and they're going to send us to war, they have to take that same drive to make that happen into getting a kill. And you see that really exemplified in Full Metal Jacket, like really overtly, like he wanted to communicate that. And also Jung's notion of the shadow, that the enemy is always in the shadow in that film until the very end, and then the assassin turns out to be a woman. And there's kind of like this subliminal gangbang thing that happens as they're all surrounding her as she's dying. Like many people have picked up on that. I'm not the only one. I
feel like they choose to clip this picture on purpose so that we only see Adam and God. We tend to ignore Eve and the devil, or whatever this below part. Sorry, David, continue.
No, thank you. It's so true. I was just thinking about this recently, actually. The whole painting, there's a lot of interesting things going on in Da Vinci's Sistine Chapel. Yeah.
I think about
Da Vinci. Is that Da Vinci? Am I tripping?
Michelangelo.
Oh wait,
yeah. I'm sorry. I was like, I'm feeling like a retard. Okay, no, sorry. Okay, continue.
Sorry, Nicole, you were saying.
Oh, just in terms of like the fruit of good and evil, and like the apple, and like that's what like we are always supposed to give our teacher, right? Is the apple. But then I think there's something in the like mass dreams that people have, like of being back at school naked. Like that's such a prominent dream in the collective. And so it kind of makes me think that that's like kind of what life is too. Like we're like back in school, like the school of life. I've
seen a number of Mormon pictures use an orange or a peach, to be fair.
Oh yeah. Well, I literally just experienced it, or a pomegranate. I literally just experienced it. For some reason I said Da Vinci, and then I'm like, the degree to which I felt like insecurity around, like, did I just say something that like my knowledge was limited? And it's just like, oh, there's a whole like, oh shit, am I like, I just had it happen. I was just right then. I was Adam having just eaten the fruit in the garden. I'm like, wait, what's happening? Yeah, okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Nicole, I was going to ask you about the Bloodlines thing, because you seem to have gone down this rabbit hole as well. What do you think in that terms then of the Bloodlines of the Illuminati? And are we all descended from Adam and Eve, or are some of us descended from Lucifer and Eve, or Cain, or what do you think about the Bloodlines of the Illuminati?
Well, because I have like a Rh negative blood type, and I've noticed like there's a difference in like the other people I know that have a Rh negative blood type. Like there's just a different, I don't know, it's just a different level of understanding. So, but there's different, like if there's that type of difference, right? Like the Rh on whether it's like a monkey or not, right? Like I have no idea, but I do think that there is something to the tracing the bloodlines. They wouldn't care about their bloodline so much if it didn't mean anything. And I kind of feel like they say like the soul is in the blood, and so there might be something in terms of like reincarnating back into your ancient bloodline. Like I remember one time someone wrote a book on occult blood science. Who was it? He was the guy who does like Rudolf Steiner, I think, wrote a book about.
Yeah.
Did you read that one?
I read a bunch of it. I stayed with a bunch of grandmothers who built mud huts in the middle of the Arizona desert for 3 months, and they had a library of nothing but Rudolf Steiner books. And like even like if you go to find online like his books, it gives you like the smallest fraction of what the man actually wrote. He was like extremely prolific, but a lot of his books are not widely available because you'd have to be in the Waldorf community to have access to these very limited private publications. But yeah, anyway.
Oh yeah, I can't remember exactly. And like when I read it though, what I picked up was like there's some sort of either like a genetic memory, like if whether your soul like reincarnates back in there, and so there was a reason why they kept their bloodlines pure, was just for like spiritual purposes. But yeah, I do. I mean,
right. There's a lot of like people who would be like outsiders to certain communities who relate to things in a certain way. Like you can see with the Nazis, like there's a lot of projection of like, why do these people only sleep with each other? Like, what are they trying to like? And a lot of their ideas around projections of what they thought that was about, they ended up wanting to outdo them with the thing that they were projecting. So like they became the thing that they were so angry about, like we should do that, we can do that, you know. So but there's also, it's so presumptuous. Like Adam, the name Adam in Hebrew, the original Adam, right? It's literally Aleph and blood. Like Dam is Hebrew for blood, and Aleph is the life breath, and like that's like the beginning, like the first indicator in Bereshit.
And a tomb, like a tomb.
Yeah, where you have like, what is the origin of life? Like, where's the first point where you're like, Adam, the Adam, male and female, is given life is with the breath. So there's a notion in Judaism that like life begins at breath, because that's like as the closest example that we can get to that it's like, oh, now this individual is alive. And so that's, you know, that becomes kind of a conflict, because a lot of Christians would believe that life is like at impregnation, like as soon as that sperm meets that egg, that's the beginning of life. Whereas like from a biblical sense, it's actually like the first point at which the entity draws a breath, because it's literally it's come to
enacting
life,
what God did, right? Breathing like God breathed. Yeah,
because it's actually like the two worlds meeting. Everything prior to that is this incubation process, and then when it enters the world, it takes a breath, and then you're like, oh, now it, you know. So I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because it gets into morality, which is a subjective thing. So like, you know, like Nietzsche's communications around morality are very much like, you know, we come from our cultures, and we come from these different judgments around what it is that is, you know, what is moral, and like it's eye of the beholder, depending, you know, like you can't.
Speaking of which, what do you think, again, Nicole, on the serpent? Because you bring up the serpent quite a bit in terms of the symbolism. I mean, you know, Adam and Eve and the serpent, right?
Yeah, I think the serpent has got something to do with electricity.
The Sarah.
Like I remember watching that movie Anaconda. We hear that like cheesy Anaconda movie, but they talked about the coil, and so for me that was I just picked, like I just thought there might be something in terms of like this simulation or whatever this is that we live in. Our bodies are electrical, like, right? Everything is just like electrical signals that is happening within our own mind. So
I can't help but think about that scene in Anaconda every time where they like cut the throat so that the larynx so they can breathe, right? Which is such a huge Kabbalistic symbol in and of itself as well.
Yeah, well, the serpent in Hebrew, Nechesh, is the same Gematria as Mashiach, with the Messiah. So which is also 358. So in Numbers 21, Moses puts the serpent on the pole that the mixed multitude had been bitten by the venomous serpents, and they would look at the serpent or touch the serpent, and they would be healed. So there's this idea that Jesus on the cross resonates this serpent on the pole. People argue this is actually where we get the symbol for money from, with the S with the line through it, is actually the serpent on the pole. But yes, they have the same gematria. So, and then there's also the idea that the fall in the garden and the serpent in the garden is equivalent to the Messiah redemption. So it's like, what is the fall and then what is the redemption? Like they're two sides of the same thing. They also happen to be Fibonacci numbers in order 358, right? Is 358 is Gematria of Nachesh and Mashiach.
Yeah. You pointed out that the first day of the Lunar New Year, so the 19 years by how's it work again? The 19-year calendar.
That's like the 19-year. I just meant the new year of this year, right? Or was that last year? Are we in the snake year this year? I can't even keep track of time. Like, my God.
We are in the year of the serpent, the Chinese zodiac, at least. We're in the year of the snake for sure. And so there's a cycle where the solar and the lunar calendar is synchronized. But you pointed this out, that this the serpent year, first day of the lunar new year of the snake, to sign a law on anti-Semitism, right? These are rumors Trump descends from the tribe of Dan. Dan is described as a serpent who shall judge his people. Denmark, the mark of Dan, Macedonian, right? Like there's a whole bunch of symbols with King Alexander the Great, right, who's a Macedonian from the mark of Dan, from the tribe of Dan as well.
That's one of the more there's an argument for the tribe of Dan, of the 12 tribes, being the Vikings. That's a stronger argument than a lot of the speculations of where the tribes ended up, right? Like they can actually like trace that line to a higher degree that seems less speculative than a lot of the tribes. So yeah, trippy. Red hair too would be an indicator of that. But
orange again, right? Orange man bad. Yeah. Totally.
I always think about remember when was it Hamlet where Shakespeare said that Denmark is a prison? Like I always wonder what that and also like that's the phrase, there's something rotten in Denmark. I haven't figured that one out. I haven't decoded that, but like I always wonder like, why did he say Denmark is a prison?
There's some reasons. Well, I mean, one of them being, because Shakespeare, most of his work is revolved around the life of Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford, right? And so there's the anti-Stratfordian theory or the Oxfordian theory that Shakespeare is really mostly just Ed de Vere. And so talking about his family, the royal family, there's the Sophia Naturalization Act, but the Scandinavians of the Mark of Dan, that this connects to where King James and his wife first had their honeymoon, was in Denmark. And there's this huge occultic tradition that comes out of Denmark, essentially where the midwives were practicing, and King James took the women and forced them into the days of humiliation, which is where we get the days of Thanksgiving, because the Spanish Armada were attacking. So we got all of these midwives together and starved them and chained them up together and forced them not to eat, to practice this magic so they could raise a storm. And the storm, luckily enough, did happen. There was a storm, and the storm, wouldn't you know it, wiped out the Spanish Armada, which is why we don't all speak Spanish and are not all, essentially Spanish, because that would have been the end of England. They would have been conquered in that storm. And so this led to Thanksgiving, because then they were given food for surviving this, something rotten in the state of Denmark, right?
Oh my God, thank you. I'd never heard any of that. That's like fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff about Shakespeare. There's definitely some rabbit holes to go down. I know we're near the end, though.
Okay, this will be on the test at the end of this episode, so you are gonna be quizzed.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We don't, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have to be near the end, but whatever.
Oh man, no. I meant this is only the beginning, but we're 2 hours deep, so I wanted to do a couple more things where we offered Nicole to go over anything she wanted to make sure she covered, because we did kind of go over things we wanted to talk about. But is there anything that you wanted to make sure that you got to talk about?
No, I just I appreciate your guys' collaboration. I would love to continue to decode. I mean, definitely. I think I believe like this life is a giant game board, and there's like a lot of silliness to it, and there's a lot of suffering, but just like, I don't know, I think there's clues in all of it. It gets a little much though, like it gets overwhelming, and there's like too many. I'm like, when I was thinking about the egg, like someone posted about the egg yesterday, and I was like, usually someone will post something, I'll be like, okay, what does this mean? Like, what does this symbolize? And like the egg, I went all over the place. Like there was just way too much for me to even begin to like. I mean, ultimately, I think the egg relates to the head. Like for me, the egg is the head, eggnog. To me, like if I had to pick like a one base thing that relates to, but there's so many layers. So anyway, thank you so much for having me here.
Why was John Lennon the Eggman?
What?
Why was John Lennon the Eggman?
I forgot. I didn't know.
Because he got laid. And that's with Yoko Ono.
Oh my gosh.
When sinks are fun.
But
we had like the CIA crackheads, right? We had all the.
But the walrus thing is another matter, because he's like, in the White Album, they're like, here's another clue for you all. The walrus is Paul, because Paul from the Bible, you know, the rock, right? Like he it's an Alice in Wonderland reference, right? Which is also connects to Humpty Dumpty, but the idea in the Walrus and the Carpenter, which is gone, they kind of go into it a little bit at the beginning of that movie Dogma by Kevin Smith, where he's equating it with the Hindu elephant or whatever with the walrus. I don't buy that, but I do like, if you just look at the story of the Walrus and the Carpenter is like Jesus, right? And they're luring the clams or whatever, the oysters that they want to eat, and they're trying to get them into the fold. So it's not just Christianity, but it's like organized religion, right? That there's this kind of like predatory thing happening with organized religions, where wherever there's the place that's the most like, you know, dignified, intentional place, where it's like you should probably be a little, you know, questioning of, you know. But it's like, that's the thing, is that why is it that the walrus is Paul? Because Paul was the one who started the church, right? So it's like, in biblically, like he sets up the church. So that's like, seems to be
and Paul is dead, right? There's also
and Paul is dead. Totally. Yeah.
Paul
and also there's a thing with John, because James and John, those were the two disciples that wanted to be at the right and left hand of Jesus's throne, right? Like, because they were visualizing kind of like a military situation where they would defeat the Romans who were occupying Judea, and that the New Jerusalem was something that they would experience like in their lifetime after this defeat, you know. But the Jerusalem got sacked and a whole other thing happened, and the reward is in the world to come, you know. It's a totally other matter. But yeah, it's just like, so I'm sorry, but like, that's the thing with John, is like, he said the thing about Christianity, that rock and roll will die out, that Christianity will die out, but rock and roll will live on, or whatever. And then his explanation for that, when a reporter asked him about that, there was like a journalist who like went to his house and like he talked to them, and he said that the reason why he said that statement was because of this book that he was really impacted by, called The Passover Plot, about Jesus like faking his own death, like by taking this drug, and that the resurrection was actually like, once he came down, then he was like, you know, actually literally came back to life, and like when I was like, so he like really entertained this whole idea about one faking one's death, which is interesting in the Paul is dead thing, because there's all these indicators that the Beatles themselves started that rumor, and then Paul ended up regretting it, you know, and that they likely had a double that was portraying Paul, that was like, so he could like take a break and do his own thing for like, there was like a year where nobody saw him, and then when he finally showed up again, it was like in Africa, and like this footage where it was the first time that he looked different, like his eyebrows were different, like
he sounds different. He's like an classically trained opera singer all of a sudden, instead of the raspy voiced Paul that we knew, right?
Yeah.
And beetles are the scarab, right? They're the ancient Egyptian sign of death, life, and immortality.
With the Rolling Stones, which is the rolling dung balls, right?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, the scarabs and the rolling dung balls.
I can imagine the shitty Beatles. Are they great? Fuck, dude.
Just referenced that before the talk today. I was like, oh, the shitty Beatles, are they any good? They suck. Yeah, but it's not the clever name. Yeah, sorry.
So I mean, I just want everyone to know. Thank you again, Nicole. I really appreciate you being here, and I agree with what David said. It's not the end. This should be at least the beginning. I hope that we can do more conversations in the future, because this has been so much fun. And I look forward also maybe to recording.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. No, just saying thank you very much.
Yeah, and I
we could talk for another half hour if you guys wanted, but you know, if you got stuff to do, I understand.
It's midnight here for me, so I have to get.
That's right. You're in freaking
Deutschland. I know. You guys could keep going. We could set up another one, but I think also I want to get Nicole back to do like decodes, because this is great, the free flow conversation, but people like you should be doing like your work. Your decodes are incredible. So just being able to go through and allowing you to present your decodes would be really awesome as well. And this has just been kind of like a, you know, an a la carte look at some of the amazing things you've done, but we're just scratching the surface and introducing you. I want to also introduce everyone else to your work. So I want to make sure they know, like, there's just so much here. I mean, really, I'm loving it. I didn't mean to do that, I swear. Okay, go to Anna Nicole Wordsmith, Miss Nick 06 on x.com, where you've just got so much amazing stuff here. Everyone should follow her. Just give her a few more follows, because that's what we're all about. Is it true that we have 333 watchers right now? That's pretty cool.
I got to point out too, just because she had the Prodigy link there that choked on an egg, that was directly after Prodigy released his album called The Hegelian Dialectic, where he was starting to go real hard into the conspiracy realm, which just coincidentally was when he chokes to death on an egg.
Oh my gosh.
The Hegelian dialectic, yeah.
Dude, like a serpent swallowing the egg.
Yeah.
And Nicole Wordsmith, super great. And then let me just also show you, if you didn't know, David Charles Plate, MK Ultrasound 723, one of my favorite names for a synchronicity artist ever. David Plate, our fellow here, he does synchro mystic works with movies and music, right? So there's just so many amazing syncs. You might have at some point heard of a Dark Side of the Moon synchronized with the Wizard of Oz. This is like that, but better. And he has just so many works here. If you go to the syncbook.com, you can find your way to his research in synchronicity occurring in multimedia. And there are thousands. There are thousands of, I won't say thousands, there's hundreds at least. There's probably nearly 1,000. I wouldn't be surprised. You got more. Rosemary's White Album, the White Album with Rosemary's Baby, An American Horror Story, 7-Eleven Ocean Drive, and Tulsa, synced with Lana Del Rey's Did You Know There's a Tunnel Underneath Ocean Boulevard? I would recommend every one of these. I really like the Ways Blood of the Love Witch. This one's one of my favorites as well. But we've talked about some of them here. Florence versus the Machines, really interesting one. The family that goes on this road trip, and there's like a techno singularity with AI that's taking over. Goes perfectly with Florence and the Machine. He's done so many really good syncs here. Natural Born Killers with Born to Die, and it's always incredible to find out that maybe these albums synchronize 3 times for the 3 acts of the movie or something like that. There's maybe half of them are impossible. They must have been intentional. They must have been done by people on purpose. But I think at least half of them, this is just amazing, natural, organic syncs happening in our reality that not everyone even realized would happen. The Matrix and the Office Space was pretty good as well.
That's my favorite.
Yeah,
and that was different than all the other ones.
Yeah, that's like a bunch of clips that are all just like all the correspondences between Office Space and the Matrix that I could see. But yeah,
and then there's also I just wanted to say the 9/11 Jay-Z album with the Nicolas Cage movie as well. Just to recommend a few, but I think you would like them, and they're pretty interesting to have on in the background. So definitely check out the Sync book and what exists there. Plus, let's talk about Paranoid American. Thomas here actually makes comic books. That's his shtick. And most of the comic books that you'll find from him, you cannot imagine being published. They're very much the Frog Brothers comics from the Lost Boys movie, or anytime you need a comic book to know how to fight a vampire or how to survive a werewolf stepmom, like you would need a Paranoid American comic. This is the Never a Straight Answer, telling you all about these are not just fun to read. These are super informative. Some of them you need for esoteric purposes. Others you need to give as an evangelical gift to other people. If you're ever in a situation with your mother-in-law and you need to explain to her how the world really works, you give her a Paranoid American comic book, and about 15 pages later, she realizes that Stanley Kubrick has been working on the moon landing and Scientology's, fighting against Xenu, and it's all in there. It's everything you'd ever want. The MK Ultra pamphlet, $5 later, you'll know everything you need to know about MK Ultra.
Well, and that's like the comic that David and I have been working on, and you, Andre. I mean, the three of us. This is the first Sync book comic book, or Synctank comic book. Sync comic. I don't know. We got to come up with a good name for it, but that one is going to be for all of the Sync evangelists, because it's going to break down Kubrick's movies and the Golden Bough and patriarchy and the matriarchy and Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, just all of that in a little comic book that hopefully will just blow people's minds that were never expecting it.
These are just really great. So highly recommend. And if you have children, connect the dots. Number one, the confounding conspiracy of chemtrails is kind of like a magic school bus, except far more valuable. Look at those Pizzagate looking Illuminati outfits she's wearing. Super good. Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you for making the time to be with us. And we'll see you again, I hope, soon.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Good night and good afternoon, and yeah, hope to see you guys soon. Bye.
Take care.